Hey guys, David here. Telltale has released episode 4 of The Walking Dead: A New Frontier literally just a week after debuting their new Guardians of the Galaxy series. That's going to be ongoing long after The Walking Dead finishes up, presumably next month. Oh boy. Now I'm a little nervous. If you guys have been keeping up with my Telltale game reviews, whether it be with Batman or with The Walking Dead, you know that one of my biggest issues with the company is that they're tackling on a little too much. Like, they're doing 2 projects at a time, whereas back in the day they would do 1 at a time, and that's, I think, where they were at their prime. And now we either have great stories with some really faulty technical hiccups in their games, or we have games that are on the solid ground, technically speaking, but the stories are not necessarily fully fleshed out. And I feel like episode 4, entitled Thicker Than Water, was somewhat of an amalgamation of those different types of vibes, because rarely do I agree with critics saying that, oh, something wasn't interesting, it wasn't clicking with me. In fact, IGN's review of the last episode, episode 3, I fully disagreed with, because they found it to be spotty here and there, and I genuinely enjoyed the episode from beginning to end. I thought it was really, really good, almost great even. This is the one, unfortunately, that I would have to agree with them in saying that minus the last 15-20 minutes that are just amazing, the way getting there is a little, I don't want to say a chore, but there's moments where it just wasn't up to standard for Telltale's merit of storytelling. It was starting to remind me a little bit more of AMC's Walking Dead show. You guys know that I'm all for character development, especially coming from a company like Telltale, who are experts at that. At least they were experts at that. Here, in this episode, I feel like they faltered just a little bit because they were starting to retread familiar ground, which is something that I would often complain about The Walking Dead, where almost every single episode, not every other episode, we would have a character talking to another character saying that it's all about survival. This is how the world is now. And this episode was doing this begrudgingly, whether it be within the universe about survival and about trying to be the one to come out on top to make sure that you are the one still breathing by the end of it. Either we would have conversations with characters about that, or we would have characters amongst themselves talking about their own personal dilemmas that we kind of already knew about, whether it be that flashback at the very beginning that, again, I wish that The Walking Dead would do more of that flashback to how things were for our characters prior to the apocalypse, and to see what type of person they were before, so to see how far they've come, with the exception of like some of the mainstay characters like Rick or whatever. Here, because it's only been the New Frontier and we've only known Javi and his side of the story and the characters that he's associated with within this one season, not necessarily Clem, then it's kind of like, okay, I get these characters, and we've already done it a couple of times. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, almost every single episode thus far opens with a flashback, so it would have been nice to just kind of continue things going from the beginning. But again, it could have been handled way worse. It's just that it just wasn't up to the standard that I was holding this series to, because from that point on, not a whole lot moves in terms of plot. We just have characters kind of getting together so that we can maybe bring about the end game to rid Richmond of this corruption that's going on from the inside, being hidden by Joan. And it does kind of pick up on the last cliffhanger, but it kind of happens off screen. It happens off screen. So then we just cut to the repercussions, and I'm like, okay, that's not as interesting as it would have been. Thankfully, the reason why I say it's not a chore to kind of go through these familiar grounds is because you're dealing with characters that you still like. I still like Javi as a character, still enjoy playing as him and making decisions as him. And then we jump into Clementine, which does have that flashback that almost is in every single episode, where you get to play as Clementine and make choices as her. Only here, I didn't feel like her flashback was as effective as the other ones were. It felt almost like a little epilogue to what happened in the last one involving AJ. Besides that, it didn't move anything forward for Clem. I feel like she got the shallow end of the stick there, but everybody else is still a relatable character to kind of grow attached to, so you feel like any one of them could go in any moment, so you're scared of certain angles that they would film things, especially Kate. I was really fearing for her. The only one that really faltered in this episode, that almost brought it down for me, is motherfucking Gabe. Gabe, man, you just completely made a 180 from a likable dude to an automatic shit stain in this episode, because dude turns into a little shitbag. Oh my god. And for every scene that he would almost seem like he was about to turn around and be cool, he would then have another scene where he was being a little punk ass. And I'm like, and it's funny because going back to some of the technical issues, not only was the frame rate a little off here and there, like it would go from 30 to that cinematic 30 to like the 60 frames per second that made the animations a little jarring, but it crashed on me once. It crashed on me once. Not as much as the previous one, but it crashed on me on yet again. Thankfully, I didn't have to replay it too much. But the one silver lining out of this crash was that I was able to alternate my dialogue choice towards Gabe, because Gabe was being a little dickhead, and my first response was to be kind of tender and see if maybe he could change his ways. But since I was given the opportunity to redo it because the game crashed, I literally chose an option to tell him to just shut the fuck up. And it was great. It was a great moment. And speaking of great moments, the last 20 to 30 minutes are amazing. That's the Telltale that I know, that was coming back in full force. In fact, I'm convinced that maybe the writers were a little stressed to kind of pad out the beginnings of this episode to make sure that it's that proper running time of like an hour and a half to 2 hours or so that they can get to those last 20 and 30 minutes, because that's when the heavy shit goes down. That's when you get put into the position of Javi and have to make the hard choice where you actually have to save one life over another. And the twist of it all was what was really heart-wrenching about it, because Joan ends up killing the person that you try to save. So it's a nice twist that I didn't see really coming, not only within a property like The Walking Dead, but almost in any kind of movie or comic book or video game that I played recently. From that point on, chaos just ensues with a shootout in the square, and then finally Kate gets rammed into a wall. We think she might be dead, or she might not be dead, although who can survive an explosion from the front of the car? Who knows? We'll end up finding out in the next episode, because it cuts right there with the walkers infesting the town of Richmond, which some may argue is somewhat lifted from both the comics and the TV show with the whole Alexandria type deal. And you can kind of also make that argument for the last episode, where you're given the ability to go Negan on that dude, which again, if it wasn't for the show, that wouldn't have happened here in the video game. And you can say that maybe the two are trying to run parallels to one another, because they know what worked in the show and what didn't, and what got people to respond. But here, the difference as to why I am fearful for this cliffhanger that has the walkers running in is because I want these characters to survive, because I care about them. Not only because I'm invested in those choices that I made, especially with that pivotal one at the end of this episode, but also because they're well-rounded characters that I love to see the journey being developed to where I wouldn't mind a season 4 with Javi continuing as the playable character. The only thing that I'm worried about is David. David, he's a loose cannon at this point. How they handle him in episode 5 is going to be a high standard that I'm going to be having reservations for going in. The characters remain compelling, give me a reason to continue this journey. It's well beyond this climactic ending, but there's no denying that episode 4 is probably the weakest one so far, especially when you come to some of the technical issues, whether it be with that one crash I had, or some of the facial animations, or just plain simple character animations, because they kind of stripped away that frame rate, and when you do that, you got some jarring little moments here and there. I'm talking some Mass Effect Andromeda type moments. So I'll be giving Thicker Than Water a very high 7 out of 10. Thus far, my lowest rating for The Walking Dead New Frontier so far. Here's to hoping that episode 5 will then pick things right up again, leading into a climactic finale that's going to give our characters justice, as well as move on forward with something that will make a very compelling season 4 for The Walking Dead Telltale series. Plus, I'm really scared that Clementine's gonna hate me because I did not kill the doctor. I was really misled. I feel like maybe they should release a patch to kind of clarify who she was talking about, because she said, I can't lose him. I thought you were talking about AJ. Who else thought that she was talking about AJ? Because I thought she was talking about AJ. So I thought, okay, I'll keep him alive so maybe he could give some answers. But no, that ended up kind of breaking that deal. And then Clementine turned to her and was like, why did you do that? I'm like, no. So with that in mind, my question to you guys, besides what you guys thought of episode 4 of The Walking Dead: A New Frontier, is what kind of choice have you made in either this season of The Walking Dead's Telltale game, or any Telltale game, or any choose-your-own-adventure type of game where you're required to make a choice? What's the one choice that you have regretted? Even though these are video games and you can jump back into them and make different decisions and overwrite your save, try to imagine that first decision that you made is the one that has been stuck with you. That feeling of regret you felt right afterwards. Which is the one that you remember unfondly the most? Please let me know all of your guys' feedback and entries in the comments below. Make sure you like and share this video, and don't forget to subscribe for more reviews, including the one for the finale next month. But until then, in the meantime, you can go ahead and follow me on Instagram and on Twitter at DarkSpiderDavid. And as always, guys, take care. I will see you all later.